Welcome to Sleep with Stories, your sanctuary of calm, where we allow ourselves to listen, to unwind completely, and ultimately, to drift off to sleep. Prepare for a truly restful night. Tonight, we'll journey back in time to feudal Japan, a mystical land steeped in story and legend. Every winding road that cuts through this landscape marks a path once trod by poets and sages. Every imposing castle, with its stone ramparts, holds an epic tale, a testament to glories and battles past. And every sacred temple, with its curved roofs and serene gardens, guards 10,000 prayers whispered to the wind, echoing through the ages. But our tale tonight is a simpler one, more intimate. It centers on a humble farmer and the extraordinary dream he experienced one sleepy, rainy afternoon. By now, I hope you're already feeling calm, your body and mind surrendering to a sense of relaxation and contentment, ready for a truly restorative night's sleep. But if, by chance, you haven't quite reached that state of tranquility, please don't worry. That's perfectly all right. Simply allow yourself to listen to tonight's story. It has been carefully woven to help you unwind naturally, offering your mind a comforting tale to focus on, just enough to quiet your thoughts, but not so much as to demand your full attention, allowing your mind to settle and gently drift into rest. So I invite you to take a deep breath in, filling your lungs with fresh air, and exhale slowly, feeling the weight of your body sink a little deeper into the softness of your bed. If you haven't already, allow your eyes to close softly, like petals folding at dusk. Relax the muscles in your face, your forehead, your cheeks, your jaw. Release all tension. As you observe the gentle, velvety darkness behind your eyelids. I'd like you to visualize a butterfly. See the delicate outline of its wings as they beat slowly, hypnotically, up and down. Notice how vibrant its colors are, a mosaic of brilliant hues, and how it moves with an ethereal lightness through the air, as if dancing with the breeze. Behind it, a majestic tree, perhaps an ancient cedar, rises from the verdant, fertile ground. Watch as the butterfly flutters higher and higher, spiraling gracefully around the sturdy, moss-covered trunk. The sky above is overcast, painted in shades of a deep, uniform gray. In the heart of a dense cloud, a single raindrop begins to form. It grows, becoming heavier and heavier, until finally it detaches and lands with a soft touch on a dark, glossy green leaf. Soon it's joined by thousands of other raindrops. Listen to their sound, a gentle, steady patter against the branches, the leaves, and the soft forest floor. The butterfly, seeking shelter, finds refuge in a crevice of the tree's trunk. It lands delicately on the old, gnarled bark, and it's colorful. Wings grow still as it rests, safe and sheltered from the rain that now falls with more intensity. Beyond its safe harbor, vast fields stretch out around a small, picturesque farming village. A damp, earthy scent, the aroma of wet earth, fills the air as the cleansing, life-giving rain falls upon this lovingly tilled land. And it is here, in this scene of tranquility and renewal, under the calming sound of the rain, that our story begins. Kinosuk's dream. Kinosuk was a simple peasant, a man whose calloused hands worked hard in the green fields that spread out around his village in the heart of ancient Japan. One afternoon, a sudden, torrential downpour surprised him and the other farmers, forcing them to abandon their tools and their work for a few hours. Laughing good-naturedly at the sudden interruption, they hurried for shelter under the broad, protective branches of a giant cedar tree, whose deep roots had witnessed countless seasons. Once they were safe and relatively dry beneath the trees. Dense canopy, Kinosuke and his companions decided to make the most of the unexpected break and have an early lunch. As raindrops drummed the soft, rhythmic melody on the foliage above their heads, they ate, drank a little sake, and settled into the kind of easy, rambling conversation, full of small anecdotes and observations, that flows so readily between old friends who share a life of work and camaraderie. As Kinosuke savored his simple but comforting meal, a small, vibrantly colored butterfly fluttered into their makeshift shelter from out of the rain and landed gently on his knee. He was about to shoo it away with a quick gesture, but one of the older farmers, a man with a face creased with the wisdom of years and a serene gaze, stopped him with a gentle touch on his arm. The butterfly, the old farmer explained in a calm, deep voice, is a symbol of the human soul. When people sleep, their souls travel the world in the form of butterflies, weaving the dreams we experience in our slumber. It was a curious notion, a poetic idea, Kinosuke thought. He wasn't sure if he truly believed it, but out of respect for the elder and the beauty of the idea, he left the butterfly undisturbed. A few minutes later, when he glanced down at his knee again, he noticed it had already departed, leaving behind only the fleeting memory of its iridescent colors. Soon, Kinosuke's stomach was pleasantly full of warm soup and sticky rice, and a sense of deep contentment and drowsiness washed over him. Leaning his head against the massive, rough trunk of the giant cedar, he felt his mind begin to wander, lulled by the soft murmur of friendly conversation flowing around him like a quiet stream. Before long, he surrendered to a deep, peaceful sleep, sheltered by the ancient tree and the sound of the rain. Awakening in a different world after a brief time, which felt like both an eternity and an instant, he found himself slowly returning to consciousness. He thought how pleasant it was to sleep beneath the shade of a tree and awaken to the fresh, invigorating scent of cedar hanging in the gentle breeze. But as Kinosuke still rested against the rough yet welcoming bark, he realized something was profoundly different. He could no longer hear the voices of his friends, their chatter and laughter. He opened his eyes and, to his surprise, found he was now sitting all alone among the thick, exposed roots of the immense cedar. There was no one else around. The only sound breaking the silence was the insistent dripping of rain, falling from leaf to leaf, a steady rhythm that accentuated the stillness of the place. Kinosuke assumed his friends had simply returned to work, perhaps taking advantage of a lull in the rain, and had left him to wake from his nap in his own time. Yet, no matter how he looked around, he couldn't see them anywhere. The rain was now accompanied by a light but persistent mist, making it difficult to see very far, shrouding the landscape in a soft, mysterious veil. With each passing moment, the mist seemed to thicken, making the outlines of the world around him more uncertain. Kinosuke peered into the haze with narrowed eyes. From where the mist was thickest, like a milky curtain, he could make out human figures walking slowly towards him. It appeared to be a large group, and as they drew nearer, the impressiveness of their presence became more evident. It was clear then that these people were not his fellow farmers. The peasants he shared his days with would never wear such fine, luxurious silks, nor adorn their hair with gleaming gold pins, nor walk in sandals of such elaborate and intricate design. It didn't take much for Kinosuke to realize he was in the presence of a royal procession, a retinue of nobles. He scrambled to his feet, his heart beating a little faster, and bowed deeply from the waist, a gesture of utmost respect and deference. Encountering the royal retinue, the leader of the royal retinue was an older man, of noble bearing, with eyes that, despite his age, sparkled with a shrewd vivacity. He approached Kinosuke and with a gentle gesture bade him rise. "Your reverence is not necessary," the elder said in a surprisingly soft yet firm voice. "We have been sent by the queen of this realm to find you. We come on her behalf to ask for your help in a matter of the utmost importance, a matter that only you can resolve." Kinosuke straightened, still a little dazed, and took in the full majesty of the group surrounding him. Each person wore sumptuous silk robes in vibrant shades of red and gold that whispered softly in the light breeze, as if they had a life of their own. Each had hair as black as the purest ebony, styled in a variety of intricate and elegant fashions, adorned with discreet combs and jewels. The air around them was perfumed with the finest, most exotic fragrances Kinosuke had ever encountered in his entire life. With every breath, his nose filled with a complex, delightful aroma. He could distinguish rare spices like cinnamon, clove, and cardamom, the sweet perfume of flowers like hibiscus, lilac, and jasmine, and the refreshing citrus tongue of fruits like orange and pomegranate. It was almost as if this heavenly aroma followed the procession like an unseen, fragrant cloud, announcing the presence of royalty to all around. Kinosuke had no idea what such an auspicious and magnificent group could possibly need from him. A simple farmer. "Surely, your excellencies must be mistaken," he said humbly, "for I am but a simple farmer, a man of the soil. But if you have come so far to find me, and if there is anything I can do, I would be honored to offer my modest assistance." The old man smiled warmly, a smile that seemed to dispel some of the mist around them. "I am quite certain that Kinosuke is the person we seek," he affirmed with conviction. "The queen herself has asked for you, specifically for your qualities." The retinue then beckoned him to accompany them. Kinosuke was taken aback, but the certainty in their eyes was so palpable, their dignity so imposing, that he found it impossible to resist. And so, with a heart torn between disbelief and a strange sense of destiny, he joined them. Before they departed, they granted him a moment of privacy so he could change into the robes of deep blue and shimmering silver they had brought for him, the traditional attire reserved for an honored guest of the queen. After donning the clothes, which were of an unimaginable softness and lightness, Kinosuke admitted to himself that if the procession was indeed mistaken, the person they mistook him for must bear an extraordinary resemblance to him. After all, the garments fit him perfectly, as if meticulously tailored to his very frame. The journey to the palace and meeting the queen, the procession then began its journey back to the queen, with a still marveling and slightly bewildered Kinosuke in tow. As they walked through a landscape that seemed at once familiar and strangely dreamlike, He marveled at the quality of the silk robes he'd been given. The material was so light and soft, he was sure it would offer little protection against the damp mist and the fine, persistent rain. Yet, to his surprise, it kept him as warm and comfortable as a thick cotton tunic. The sandals, likewise, were incredibly comfortable. To Kinosuke, it felt like walking on fluffy clouds. He must have been distracted by the opulence and novelty of it all, for before he knew it, he and the royal retinue stood before an imposing palace, its dimensions and home, beauty surpassing anything he had ever seen or dreamed of. Guards in gleaming red and gold armor opened the massive, artfully crafted gates, and they entered a vast, flower-filled courtyard. The queen's chambers were a breathtaking spectacle, filled with beautiful treasures unlike anything Kinosuke, in his simple life, could have imagined. Wall tapestries, woven with gold and silver threads into the softest, most delicate fabric, hung about the room, vibrantly depicting important and glorious moments from the kingdom's history. Every inch of the floor was covered with plush sheepskin. Rugs, exotic animal pelts, or stunning bamboo mats, woven with the highest quality and precision. Above his head, the chamber ceiling was dotted with delicate stained glass windows, perhaps skylights that filtered the outside light into soft, magical hues. Kinosuke imagined himself lying on his back on one of those soft rugs at dusk, watching. The stars begin to twinkle through the ceiling windows, one by one, like diamonds scattered across an infinite black velvet. The queen, seated on a raised throne, wore robes of the purest, most beautiful fabric, of a creamy white that seemed to radiate its own light. His own silks, the ones he wore, shimmered as they reflected the light from the countless paper lanterns hung around the chamber. But the queen's robes seemed to emit a soft, ethereal glow, as if woven from moonlight itself. They were exquisitely embroidered with crimson threads, illustrating a cluster of small, round, appetizing lyces. The succulent designs were so realistic, so vivid, that Kinosuke felt his mouth water just looking at them. Then the queen began to speak. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper, yet it carried the unmistakable weight of her authority and wisdom. Even though she barely spoke above a delicate murmur, every person in the silent, reverent chamber could hear her every word with crystal clarity, as if she were speaking directly to each of their hearts. She explained, with grace and dignity, that they had been observing Kinosuke for some time, following his life and his work. They considered his agricultural skills and his character to be irreproachable. He was, she said, exactly the kind of hard-working, upstanding person she needed to help revitalize a specific part of her vast domain. A small island, blessed with rich soil and hard-working citizens, but which, through various misfortunes, had fallen on hard times and was in need of new leadership. The queen said that the entire kingdom, from the humblest servant to the noblest advisor, would be immensely grateful if Kinosuke could accept the challenge and assume the governorship of Vei, that island. Not quite knowing what else to do, feeling both deeply humbled by the honor and a little daunted by the responsibility, he graciously accepted the offer with a respectful bow. The queen smiled, a serene smile that further illuminated her noble, gentle features. She knew in her heart she had made the right choice. The governor's island, years of prosperity, Kinosuke spent the next few days in the splendor of the palace, immersed in preparations for his journey to the island, which, he then learned, was located in the middle of a wide, majestic river. He was still shocked, almost incredulous, at the turn his fortunes had taken, but there was so much work to be done, so many instructions to receive and plans to discuss, that he barely had a moment to truly process it all, absorbed in the rush of new information and responsibilities. Finally, the day of departure arrived. Kinosuke was accompanied to the island by several experienced and wise counselors, appointed by the queen herself to assist him in his new role. They journeyed through landscapes that seemed to stretch across all of Japan, over verdant hills, covered in wildflowers, fertile fields where rice swayed in the wind, through bustling large cities and picturesque small villages, nestled in tranquil valleys. The final leg of their long journey involved crossing the wide river, which they did aboard a beautiful wooden ship, with tall sails billowing in the wind, the same creamy, luminous white as the queen's own robes. Aboard the ship, as the vessel glided smoothly through the waters, Kinosuke allowed his mind to finally rest and absorb the magnitude of events. He stood at the prow, feeling the breeze on his face, and closed his eyes. He felt the gentle warmth of the afternoon sun on the backs of his hands. The fresh, pure air flowed through his hair, making loose strands dance lightly across his face. Seabirds called to one another, their voices drifting over the soft lapping of the current against the ship's hull. The serene, rhythmic sway of the vessel made Kinosuke think of his old hammock back home at the farm, and the way it would swing lazily in the warm breeze of summer afternoons. Soon, the island came into view, first as a distant green blur on the horizon, which gradually took shape and revealed its details. The boat skillfully maneuvered towards the rustic dock. As soon as Kinosuke stepped onto the island's firm soil, he knew instinctively that the queen had spoken the truth about its fertility. The earth beneath his feet was springy and moist, full of promise. Tall, lush grasses and intense green covered every square inch of the island, and beautiful leafy trees rose over the land, providing cool, welcome shade from the afternoon sun. The counselors led him to the governor's estate, a charming yet modest house where he would live and work during his stay. As they walked towards the residence, the counselors politely apologized for how small and simple it must seem compared to the magnificence of the queen's palace. But Kinosuke, who had never in his life lived anywhere larger or more comfortable than his family's humble farmhouse, could scarcely believe his eyes. The estate was, indeed, smaller than the queen's, but to him it seemed like a palace. It possessed many spacious rooms, filled with luxurious comforts he had never dreamed of owning, like soft, upholstered armchairs that invited rest, plush carpets that caressed his feet, and a large feather bed that seemed an invitation to peaceful dreams. Kinosuke knew, in that instant, with a certainty that warmed his heart, that he would be very happy here. And he was absolutely right. At first, he felt a little overwhelmed by his new, complex responsibilities, so different from the predictable routine of the countryside. But over his first year on the island, with the help of the counselors and his own dedication, he managed to learn about the local people, their customs, their needs, and their lives. Together, in a collaborative and harmonious effort, they produced the first great harvest in over a decade a vibrant testament to their hard work, shared wisdom, and the generosity of that blessed land. To celebrate this milestone, Kinosuk organized a grand feast for every one of his citizens, from the youngest to the oldest, strengthening community bonds and sowing joy. In this way, time passed, flowing like the river that surrounded the island. He spent the next 15 years as governor, dedicating his days to slowly helping transform that place into a true paradise for all its people. The woodlands, once wild and untamed, were carefully cultivated and meticulously pruned, transforming into thriving orchards that produced the sweetest plums, the juiciest cherries, and the most flavorful pears in all of Japan. The farms, once neglected and unproductive, now yielded more rice and grain annually than the entire island could consume in a decade. Kinosuk, with his generous vision, made sure to send the surplus food back across the river so that the abundance could be shared with the entire kingdom, a gift from the prosperous island. As governor, Kinosuk was deeply loved and respected by the island's citizens. He settled disputes with care, patience, and good humor, always seeking justice, fairness, and harmony among all. He planned wonderful festivals to celebrate births, weddings, and other happy occasions, treasuring every moment of community joy and togetherness. And even with all his responsibilities, he still found time to work in the fields, side by side with the farmers, doing what he had always done best, cultivating the land with his own hands, feeling that deep connection to the cycle of life. Farewell and the unexpected return. Then, one day, when the island was flourishing in peace and prosperity, the queen sent a messenger. One of her trusted attendants arrived by boat, bearing a message for Kinosuk. In gentle but firm words, he told him the time had come to return to the place where he truly belonged. The queen, the attendant said solemnly, will never forget your invaluable contribution to the transformation of this island, nor will its citizens, who hold you in the highest esteem. Kinosuk felt a profound sadness well up in his heart at the news, for this place, with its people and its landscapes, had become a second home to him, a home he had helped build and nurture with so much love and dedication. But that night, to his surprise and emotion, his counselors and the islanders surprised him with the most excellent and memorable feast he had ever seen. Food was plentiful and delicious, drink flowed generously, and dancing went on late into the night, a celebration of gratitude and farewell. It was better than anything he had ever experienced on the island. When the banquet finally wound down, and Kinosuk had bid farewell, one by one, to the last of the revelers, his heart heavy but grateful, he went to his room and lay down on the enormous, inviting feather bed. Slowly, he sank into the soft mattress, feeling it envelop him in a warm, welcoming, and comforting embrace. He felt himself begin to float gently from wakefulness into sleep, like a boat drifting on calm waters. But before he fell completely asleep, he took one last, nostalgic look at the ceiling dot when he had first arrived on the island so many years ago. He had requested a significant renovation to his quarters, the addition of small, delicate windows in the ceiling, like little skylights, so he could watch the stars emerge, one by one in the vast night sky, a sight that had always enchanted him. Looking at them now, he saw them twinkling in the deep, dark sky, like old friends winking goodbye, silent guardians of his dreams and his time on that beloved island. Within minutes, Kinosuke was fast asleep. The next morning, bright and fresh, the Queen's attendant led him to the dock, where the boat waited silently on the serene river waters, ready to take them back to the mainland. Kinosuke took one last, long look at the island as he boarded. He saw the thriving orchards laden with fruit, the fertile fields undulating in the wind, and the now prosperous village in the distance, a living testament to his years of work and dedication. Then, with a soft creak, the boat weighed anchor, ready to begin its return journey. As they pulled away from the dock, a thick mist began to rise from the water, appearing from nowhere. It was dense, but curiously, unlike the cold, damp mist he was used to, this one was not cold to the touch. In fact, it was warm and soft, like a fleecy cotton blanket gently enveloping him, bringing a sense of comfort and drowsiness. Soon, the mist grew so thick that Kinosuke couldn't see even a few feet in front of him, everything becoming a white, indistinct blur. And so, feeling a deep peace and an inevitable surrender, he closed his eyes, awakening under the cedar tree and the fen. Dream's revelation. When he opened them again, he was no longer on the boat, nor did he feel the gentle sway of the water. Instead, to his immense surprise, he was back under the giant cedar tree, with its protective branches, surrounded by his old farmer friends, who regarded him with a mixture of curiosity and amusement. He blinked a few times, confused, trying to make sure he was really home, back in his familiar reality. He ran his hands over the earth around him, which was still damp and cool from the afternoon rain. One of the farmers chuckled at seeing him behave so strangely. He asked in a teasing tone if Kinosuke had enjoyed his nap. Slowly, still dazed by the vividness and apparent length of his dream experience, Kinosuke asked him how long he had been asleep. The farmer looked at him oddly, as if the question were absurd, and said, "Why, Kinosuke, it's only been 10 minutes or so, no more than that. You barely closed your eyes." Kinosuke, his mind still buzzing with the images and sensations of his dream, then told the other farmers everything that had happened to him. The majestic royal procession, the Queen's richly decorated chambers, the Paradise Island, his 15 years as a dedicated governor, every vivid detail of his long journey. The other men listened intently to his account, their expressions ranging from fascination and disbelief to a bit of amused skepticism. When he finished his extraordinary narrative, he asked them, with a hint of anxiety in his voice, what it all could possibly mean. The other farmers weren't sure. They scratched their heads and began to discuss animatedly among themselves, each offering a theory more improbable and fanciful than the last. But before they could get too far in their conjectures and speculations, a calm, wise voice interrupted them. It was the old farmer again, the one who had spoken to him about the butterfly on his knee earlier. His voice was as soft and serene as the sound of the wind, moving gently through the tall grass in the fields. He said he had watched Kinosuke napping against the tree trunk, and that, at the exact moment he fell soundly asleep, a small yellow butterfly, much like the one that had landed on his knee, flew from his tunic, right from over his heart. The other men, now more attentive, nodded in agreement. They too had seen the butterfly, though they hadn't noted its origin quite so precisely. The old farmer continued his account, his eyes fixed on a distant point, as if revisiting the scene. Kinasuk's butterfly was resting for a moment on the cedar's trunk when it was approached by several diligent ants. The ants, with surprising gentleness, seemed to take hold of the butterfly and carried it into a small hole at the base of the trunk, disappearing into the darkness. A few minutes later, the same butterfly reappeared from the same hole and flew back to Kinasuk's tunic, landing softly on his chest just before he woke from his nap. Perhaps, the old man concluded with a slight smile, that explains the very vivid dream he shared with us about the procession that took him to the queen's estate and then to the island. Kinosuk and the other farmers agreed that this was an intriguing explanation, and that there was a simple way to find out if there was any truth to it. Together, careful not to cause any damage, they gently cleared away some of the damp earth from the base of the cedar near the hole the old man had indicated. There, to everyone's astonishment, they found a small but bustling and organized ant colony. One part of that underground colony looked incredibly familiar to Kinasuk, like an echo of his dream. It was a small patch of earth covered in bright, velvety green moss. The recent rain had created a tiny stream that meandered around this patch of moss, giving it the exact appearance of a miniature island. And, to complete the surreal scene, in that tiny makeshift stream, a minuscule boat, cleverly fashioned from small twigs and a piece of bark, floated gently in the tiny current docked together. The farmers replaced the earth with utmost care, so as not to further disturb the ants in their small, industrious underground kingdom. By now, the rain had stopped falling completely, and the sun was beginning to peek through the clouds. After a little more conversation, filled with wonder and reflection on the mysteries of life and dreams, the farmers returned to their fields, thoughtful about their friend Kinasuk's strange and extraordinary dream. A legacy of dreams and reality. But Kinasuk, he would never forget that day, that rainy afternoon under the cedar tree. For the rest of his long life, he would think, with immense fondness and sweet nostalgia, of his time as the beloved governor of the island. And every day, as he plowed the earth, sowed the grain, and harvested the fruits of his labor in his real fields, he would feel the sun's warmth on his back and remember his robes of blue and silver silk, so light and comfortable. Every bite of a juicy fruit would be a little sweeter, a little more special, as he recalled the bountiful harvest feasts on his dream island. And every breeze that rustled through the fields would carry with it the faint, imagined scent of the vast river that surrounded his island home, a persistent echo of his extraordinary dream. An adventure lived in the realm between waking and sleep. And it goes without saying that, before Kinasuk left the protective shade of the cedar tree after his nap on that memorable day, he divided what remained of his lunch and left half of it by the tree trunk near the discreet entrance to the ant colony. A final gift, an offering of gratitude to his tiny hosts and friends, in thanks for a wonderful adventure and an unforgettable dream that would stay with him forever.